There are many ways to make a team physical enough for a deep playoff run. The offensive line, for example, but is another move the Miami Dolphins could make. Would that gear them up for a deep physical playoff run? We will talk about that. Also, is this the most pivotal moment and decision in the Mike McDaniel tenure? Of course, talking about finding that replacement. We will talk about that. We got a lot to go over today. Plus, we know when Brandon Staley is going to be in the building. We'll talk a little bit more about Brandon Staley today. Do us the favor, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new. As usual, let's get into it.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! Deep upfield down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again! Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphins fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. No, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason. We're back here for another one as we dive Fin Too Deep with myself and my co-host all the time that we do it, Neal Driscoll. Neal, the dust has started to settle. I said yesterday, the dust hadn't even settled, and you could see the propulsion from the jet engine taking off to Philadelphia. Well, now the dust has settled. All right. The Philly cheesesteaks have been eaten. The spaghetti and the gabagool is out for Fangio and his little homecoming. And we're stuck here sitting on our hands waiting for the decision to come down of who the next defensive coordinator will be. Now that you've had a few days to think about it, Neal, we'll talk about the candidates. We'll talk about Staley. We'll talk about all that later on. We'll even talk about this decision and how it impacts Mike McDaniel. But as you've had a couple more days to sit on it, how are you feeling about the Fangio departure?
It's time to move on, man. For whatever I think the expectations we had when Vic Fangio was coming in, let's just be frank. The defense improved, but, I don't think either of us wanted it for one season. Vic Fangio's tenure in Miami to me was a complete failure, and it is what it is. You can't force a guy to want to be there. You know what I mean? You can't make someone's heart and passion into a role if that's not his first choice. And I think our friend Alfredo Ortegiega, whatever you say, Alf from 3 yards per carry. I think he summed it up great with his post the other day, where he had a tweet out there that was like, you just can't pay people to come here.
Can't buy loyalty.
You can't buy your loyalty. Develop your own guys. And I think, seriously, that's like my footprint right now on how I view the Dolphins. Like, I wanted Vic Fangio. I took the victory lap so when we got him. And I've done that for a lot of the big moves we've made. But those big moves just always haven't panned out because I think what we have we're getting individual components of what it takes to win a championship and trying to put it together instead of starting at the grassroots and building it the right way.
Why don't you tell everyone what you've heard from people inside the Ravens organization,
right,
about the players we have, about how they view the roster here in terms of the drive to win it. Tell people that, because I wanted you to expand on that. Do you think that leaked out into the coaching a bit, i.e. Fangio? So tell people what you had heard there.
Well, I had heard that, and this is kind of the quote, was that a lot of the players on the Dolphins don't have that fire in their belly. That was the exact term that I was told. It was alluded that they didn't have enough dogs and people that loved football. And I think that's unfair when I hear it, right? When I first hear it, I get defensive. This is my football team. How the hell are you going to talk about players on my team like that? And then, you see a team here locally, and you see a guy, Lamar Jackson, who's the favorite to win the MVP, and reporters are putting mics in his mouth, and he's like, I don't care. I'm locked in. Playoff game. Don't talk about MVP. Don't care about it. I just think there's a demeanor here. It's the old African proverb, right? That this is what Barry Trotz told the Capitals before they won their cup in 2018. He says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we enter this football season last year here at about 2,000 yards for Tyreek Hill. We hear, Tua's goals. We have all these guys with their individual goals. And I think it's great to have individual goals. I put individual goals on a post and have it on my my sink every morning when I wake up. I don't know if you always have to make those public and put them before the team goals. So I think that you need to see, and I think the Dolphins are on the path of becoming that team, where there's the unity, they're striving for the same things. But there was obvious that Vic Fangio wasn't a part of that, because his damn near his whole defensive backfield came out and practically showed you what they thought about when he left. So I think that he's a talented coach, and this isn't me knocking on Vic Fangio. I still think he's a top 5 defensive coordinator in football.
I agree.
I just don't think he's a top 5 defensive coordinator in football when he's the defensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins. And, that creates opportunity, right? To go out and find somebody who maybe is on par, maybe who's someone who's not, to change the energy. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the next few days shake out, because I think this is a big crossroads for the Miami Dolphins. We're going to see how Mike McDaniel responds to this, because that was Mike McDaniel's guy, right? Reason, I know you put that out there. They wanted this a year earlier. They wanted a 1-year contract. They wanted this to get done sooner than it did. It comes here.
What's crazy is if they got their wish, Neal, he would have never had a taste of Philly.
Right. He would never had a taste of Philly. I think it's very interesting, man. And I do think it's a dark eye on the Miami Dolphins for this part, is that he's just so well respected and such a big name that obviously anyone who knows football is going to run with this and be like, what's wrong with the Miami Dolphins?
Yeah.
I actually will say this. It's the glass half empty, glass half full approach. I actually think that if he wanted to leave and they didn't beg, because we've seen this team be so desperate before, where they're whining and dining Jim Harbaugh while Tony Sparano's their coach. Like, they were not desperate. They said, go. I think that this could be what is actually right with the Miami Dolphins, to let somebody who doesn't want to be a part of your organization go.
Yeah, that's a damn good point. We talked about that when it went down, that we heard there was no fight. And the other thing too is, other than, obviously a couple players talking to the media, there was really no smear campaign on the way out either, right? Like, when there's bad feelings between an organization and a coach, there's sometimes a smear campaign on the way out. And it was just like, it just feels like, what I say with Danny Crossman, I say, hey, I get you don't want a second shirt right now, but rip the Band-Aid off. It feels like that's what they did with Fangio. They just ripped the Band-Aid. And because, listen, they didn't even bother to try and get compensation for him. It's clear. I talked about it on the show yesterday, Neal. It's clear as day there's tampering involved here. Like, word. I don't know if you saw word starting to leak out that the NFL is probably going to investigate this. It's clear as day tampering, and Miami was just like, whatever, go.
Yep, go. Well, look, here's the thing: it's 2024. Football is different than it was 10 years ago, right? Look at the open market head coach. Bill Belichick struck out on getting the Atlanta Falcons job, right? Like that just happened. The second best coach in NFL history, and there was
all the power he wants, though. I think, Neal, that's why.
Right. But 8 vacancies. Loser organizations like the Carolina Panthers and the Atlanta Falcons could get a guy with the tutelage of Bill Belichick, and they say no.
Because the rumors, they believe Raheem Morris is going to build a better staff too.
And I also think you want coaches that young players can gravitate towards. And the NIL money that's going in college makes it so much harder because people are leaving their college with what I call bleep you money. And in life, when you have bleep you money, authority rules, it doesn't matter as much to you. You've already established. Not everybody who plays and collects a check from the National Football League loves football. It's a job, just like people who sell insurance don't love their job, or if they work at Verizon, they don't love their job, right? Like not everybody has to love their job. Just because you're good at it doesn't mean you have to love it. So I think what happens now, you get these big signing bonuses. You have young kids, 23, 24, 25, $30 million in the bank, right? How do you relate to that player? And a guy like Vic Fangio, who rules with authority and discipline, is that how you win in today's world? Parenting's different today than it was when I was a kid. So it's like it's a different world. And I think that I like this is what we will talk about Mike McDaniel a lot, right? Coming up this offseason. What I will say is I think he has shown some warts as a play caller, and you've agreed, we all say. But what he did that I think was sensational was change the culture of the Miami Dolphins. And when the outside world views the Miami Dolphins now, it's a lot different than it used to be under Joe Philbin or Cam Cameron or any of those other guys that were here. Like, it's hard sometimes for us to see it because I do have the aqua and orange glasses on. I make excuses. I'm like a defense lawyer, and I know my guy committed the murder, but I'm going to tell you right now that he did it, right? But when you hear it from the outside world, like I can't tell you how many people this year texted me during games like, man, your Dolphins are so fun to watch, man. Aren't you happy that you stuck with them? Like, I got people like that, which is really cool to see. Now, we didn't get the results. There's a lot of wood to chop here, but I think Mike McDaniel did a sensational job of changing the culture. And that's where I think this coaching vacancy is another opportunity for Mike McDaniel to correct a wrong, put another stamp, and enhance this culture. Because we didn't know this, but the old Miami Dolphin culture, all this shit would have leaked all year long, right?
Yeah. Under Flores, we would have heard way more way earlier. We didn't start to hear things till January, till the end of the year, before the end of the year.
January 2nd was when we had our text exchange that talked about Vic Fangio being unhappy. That was the first, and that was the first I saw it on anyone's platforms. I'm not here pounding the claim to be the first that said it.
Yeah, and then the post was up on January 4th on the Patreon for people.
Right. So we talked about that. That was the first time after frustration at the end of the season that I think anything leaked. I think that's actually improvement from the Miami Dolphins front office. And I'm not going to lie, like there was times where I was like, damn, how checked in is Vic Fangio really? Like in his pressers, he just seemed like all the time. And I just attributed it to him being an old guy who's, a different bird, but it's interesting, man. But like, I'm okay because I'm excited about the hire now. Like the pain of losing at Vic Fangio kind of wore off pretty quick because again, we had Vic Fangio. We didn't get a playoff win. Let's go find us a guy that's going to help make this defense, make the secondary want to be here, that's going to allow Jalen Ramsey to travel, who's going to be able to create pressure without having, just do it all four, find unique ways to send the blitz, those unique coverages that we heard that he came into Miami with. Damn, we sure could have used them in some of those games. I never saw them. So, while I'm not trying to pile on Vic Fangio, this is a two-way street. I think a lot of people always go and point the franchise. I think there's a lot of kind of egg on the face of Vic Fangio in this as well.
And I think a lot of people are trying to give Greer fault for this, and you can't give Greer fault because look at what they did.
Nothing to do with it.
Well, no, not only that, but you got to give him actually kudos for the Fangio move, and I'll tell you why. They forced Boyer and Crossman on McDaniel when he got here, right? That's why Fangio didn't come the first year or wasn't hard pressed by the Dolphins. They realized they screwed up. They got rid of Boyer. And Greer went out and negotiated, and they made him the highest paid defensive coordinator to try and right that ship for McDaniel. This falls on this, and we'll get into it here in a second. But this falls at McDaniel's feet right now. This not working out. You got to be objective, like how we were with Flores. How Flores. Okay, here's the frustrating thing. Flores couldn't get the OC right. couldn't get it right. The issue is we started to see in the back half of the season, McDaniel had got the DC right in Miami, it looked like. All right. Now, we can all say we didn't like him shadowing with Ramsey. We can all say this, and I'll said it when he mutually parted ways. I'll say it again. Spoke volumes to me that one of the players that Fangio propped up from the moment he got here, Javon Holland, was one of the first to go on social media and basically tell him to kick rocks. That spoke volumes of like, if the guy you loved to the media was saying that, what about the guys you didn't love, like Cam Smith and et cetera, et cetera. So I get all that, but man, you look at the back half of that season, that defense was really coming together. He was understanding the personnel. And what's crazy is, imagine if his heart was in it, where this defense the level this defense could have, got to. But I mean, I'm with you. It is what it is. And I think, we'll talk about candidates later, but I think, when you talk about in-house, yes, I think Campanelli's a favorite, but I also think quietly, Ronaldo Hill is a name that needs to be talked about a little bit more. That's why he was on my candidate list, because, he was basically brought over here to be Fangio's, the idea was what? When Fangio leaves in 4 or 5 years, Ronaldo Hill might be taking over the defense.
Right. Yeah, and I hope one of the things that happens is that Ronaldo Hill stays. I really hope that's something that happens, because here's what we have to be prepared for, just how this works. We hire a defensive coordinator. If it's not somebody that's in-house, and I think Ronaldo Hill would stay. If it's Brandon Staley, for example, I think Hill would probably stay.
Yes, I agree.
I'm just saying, overall, Anthony Campanelli might not have a job if we hire from the outside, because the guys, it depends on who we hire and the brand of guy we hire. But if we go out and go the established route, you don't necessarily know that everyone's going to be brought back. So those are huge dominoes to take. A coach departure, right, doesn't just impact that coach. It's a domino, and it falls and it knocks down everyone around them. I mean, do you see
Vrabel and Belichick? Do you see them going into, say, announcing before they take coordinator jobs if they don't get a head coaching job?
I don't think Bill Belichick will, because I think he wants that record, and I think he's going to sit out and try to get a job over the year. I'll say this: I think Mike McDaniel is on the hot seat this year, and what I mean by that, I'll define it, because I think people will be shocked to hear that. If this team doesn't make, if the season goes like it did this season again, I think there'll be serious conversations about a guy like Bill Belichick, just because it's not me saying I want to do this. Who is Stephen Ross? Stephen Ross is the brand name dude. He wants the best.
Word is that if Andy Reid retires, that's the job he's going to be gunning for. And I'll say this: if he goes to KC, it's only a matter of time before Mahomes leaves. And come on down to South Florida, brother, if you're leaving. I'm just saying.
I trade all 53 players.
I said that a couple days ago. I did like a 20-minute rant on Mahomes and how great he is. Because I think he's going to win this weekend, I think he's going to win another Super Bowl.
I don't, but I would love to see it. I know I'm a well-known Ravens hater. I live here, and I gotta see a team.
Listen, I would rather see a new team in there. Listen, if you ask me, would I rather see the Ravens in the Super Bowl? Yeah, I'd rather see a new team. But they look like they flicked the switch, brother. Look like they said, "All right, here we go."
I actually think Lamar deserves it, and I started as a big
for
Lamar,
what he's been through as Baltimore.
Yeah, I think that there's things I don't like about Lamar Jackson that I won't share, because it's not related to football. But I think he bet on himself, got his contract, and he's delivered. And I like that, because now everyone on Twitter who's a Ravens fan is a huge Lamar Jackson fan. A lot of those guys that I'm not
wanted Tyler Huntley are now Lamar Jackson.
In 2020 and 2021, those were the guys saying that he's faking injuries, not playing playoff games. You know how it is. It's just like fans, like every fan base is like our Twitter as well. But I do think that Mike Vrabel, and I said this when you had your kind of your emergency pod the other day. For me, Mike Vrabel presents the one opportunity where I see this Vic Fangio departure to be an upgrade, because I think he's a hell of a defensive coach.
But do you think Vrabel or a Bill Belichick with those alpha? Do you think? I think like Fangio. Do you think they? One of the things was I said after the postgame, one of the postgame shows with the Dolphins After Dark. Do you really think these alpha old school personalities like answering to the new wave Mike McDaniel?
It's
a real question.
Probably not. But how much did Vic Fangio really have
money
to
talks,
answer?
bullshit walks. But look
Right,
at money.
but I will say this, to my point where I kicked this off, I don't want to pay Mike Vrabel to be here if he doesn't want to be here. And if we do it, we have to know it's likely a 1-year thing. But why I still like that move is because I told you this.
Because if you
And
move off McDaniel after the season, you can slide Vrabel in.
I personally would move off McDaniel for Mike Vrabel right now, and that makes me. I think Mike McDaniel is a top 10 coach in football right now. At the end of 10, I think he's around 10, 9 to 10. That's where I have him. It's a very similar conversation for me with McDaniel where I have Tua. I think Mike McDaniel is going to get better and better. I think he's going to get upgraded. I think he's going to learn, and he's going to be smarter. I think Mike Vrabel's a borderline top 5 coach in football, and that for me is where. And I love his approach to the game.
You're just about an upgrade because you realize the window. That's all.
Yeah, but like I do think there is a way. I do think I saw that. I know. I saw that.
Okay, anyways, continue. Yeah.
You're right. I got commitment issues. If I take a girl on 20 dates and I'm still striking out, man, I'm moving on to the next. Just joking. But like with that said, like it's an interesting situation where it's hard to make a personality mix, and it's probably not the right hire. But what I will say, because we talked about Anthony Campanelli a lot, right, when this emergency podcast, and I love the guy, and I think he's a gem. If you promote from within, I don't care what the name is, Ronaldo, him, I can't come into this season thinking we can win a Super Bowl next year because we're going to have the same learning on the job, mistakes that we see with Mike McDaniel. Doesn't make him a bad coach. He's just not a perfect coach right now. We can't let our coaching staff not have synergy with what our roster is. I think our roster is a Super Bowl roster. I don't think our coaching staff is ready right now. And that was with Vic Fangio on board. So to me, that's where I think Campanelli probably deserves it. He's a great young coach, but then that changes what at least my personal expectation is, because it doesn't matter who you are. Young coaches learn on the fly, right? Like young coaches learn on the fly. We saw, it's very rare that a first-time defensive coordinator is perfect at what they do, right? So I think that's where I am. Like, I think evaluating the outside options make a lot of sense with caveats, and I hate that because you're not giving said hire the authority to make his own decisions. But I would be like, look, dude, I won't use my defense coordinator, but Anthony Campanelli has to be on your staff. And I think a lot of coaches would probably admire to have a guy like Campanelli on their staff. It's very, I know you're going to ask a question about it later, so we'll cover it more then. But yeah, this is a freaking big deal, man. And who they hire is a big deal.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, let's get into this for a second. Let's start off with this. Is this hire the most pivotal moment in Mike McDaniel's tenure as a Miami Dolphins coach? Now, the reason why I ask this and I say this is because, listen, if you don't get this right and our offense continues to have a little bit of a nosedive in in late December and January next year, but then the defense also takes a step back from flirting with top 5, being in the top 10. If that defense visibly regresses to the untrained eye even, could this decision lead to Mike McDaniel being out the door, given the window, the checks that have been cut, the money that's been put up overall? If you get this wrong, even on a 1 year, it just falls on its face. Could this lead to Mike McDaniel being out on the street? And could this therefore be the most pivotal and the biggest decision of Mike McDaniel's tenure as Miami Dolphins coach? I think that's a fair question, no, Neil?
Yeah, and I think my answer is the second, and we're going to have answers to that and what I view as the first in the next 60 days. And I'm speaking of this, again, isn't what Neal Driscoll wants or would do, but I just think this is the reality of where we are. I think it's the second. I think the biggest decision Mike McDaniel is going to make, which he's going to be included in, is what this extension looks like for Tua Tagovailoa, because I think we agree it's going to come, it's going to happen. It's going to happen in the next 60 days, right? Because that creates the salary cap. But with Mike McDaniel, if the season next year didn't go the way he wanted, what he could do is say, hey, look, guys, I gave this the best shot I could with Tua after 3 years, and kind of throw Tua under the fence to keep his job, right? You know what I mean? Like you could see a coach doing that, right? It's happened in the past. So I think the Tua contract is bigger, but I think this is huge because you can't take a step back when you underachieved this year, and injuries had a part to do with it. Sure did. But so did your play calling. And so did how the offense looked in the last quarter of the football season. Like, this hire is really big because you also are trying to replace a guy who at least took this defense to heights that we haven't seen in 3 to 5 years, right? So, yeah, it's a big deal. I think this offseason, for me, the next 60 days is what I call the Miami Dolphins crossroads. Like, this is what's going to shape the next 2 to 3 years, because we can talk about the quarterback contract. We can talk about the coaches. We can also talk about the salary cap predicament they're in, because it's a predicament. The cap's real. There's flexibility, all that stuff. All that's true. But, what you can't do is say, I'll play GM. I'm going to run over the cap, and I'm going to tell you that we can restructure 30 players and we have $75 million in cap space. To me, you can't do that because you can't restructure everyone. Like, the Christian Wilkins contract is going to happen in the next 60 days or not happen, right? So you got Tua's contract, Wilkins' contract, a defensive coordinator hire. Chris Greer and Brandon Staley have to literally do salary cap gymnastics to keep this team as competitive as they can be. Those are 4 questions that we'll have answered in the next 60 days, man. I'm not saying this isn't to me doom or gloom. I'm actually kind of intrigued and excited to see how it plays out, but you can't have everything. So it's going to be, if you ask me now, Tua gets his bag, that's going to happen. I think Wilkins is gone. I think Wilkins knows what he's going to command on the open market, and there's 2 or 3 teams that are willing to give it what he wants, not what the Dolphins want. And I think the Dolphins are going to make a good hire at defensive coordinator, and I think Brandon Staley and Chris Greer will do a great job of navigating the cap, creating space. We might not. We're going to have tough decisions because I failed one other thing. I think it's going to happen in the next 60 days. We're going to learn the fate of Xavier Howard, and whether he's here or not, we got to agree with this. This guy is whatever way you want to slice it, a top 3 defensive back in this franchise history, and it's huge cap savings after June 1. But this isn't, to me, pat on the back, attaboy, it was good, get out of here. This is a guy, for me personally, I think he's been one of the best Miami Dolphins of the decade, period, if not overall one, the best potentially. This is a guy that needs to have his name in the Ring of Honor one day. So that's another big decision that looms here. So it's going to be, I think Chris Greer said 30 to 40% roster turnover, and that's a large number. I got to see how it shakes out to see how even, I can't, someone asked me this the other day, do you think the Dolphins are a playoff team next year? How the hell am I supposed to know when I have no idea what their roster is going to look like?
Yeah.
There's a lot of wood to chop between now and March 15th or whatever, when that new year kicks off. But man, the Miami Dolphins have large questions that is going to just tell you the direction of this franchise.
All right. Speaking of the decision, we just had some news come down the pipeline here that the Miami Dolphins, they are going to be interviewing the Buffalo Bills linebackers coach. Was it Bobby Babich, I believe, is who they're going to be. Bobby Babich, they have requested an interview with him. So he's emerging. That's 3 defensive coordinator interviews that have emerged for Bobby Babich, 40 years old. He used to play ball at North Dakota State. He was a cornerback. He's been with the Bills since 2017. He was assistant defensive coach. Then he was a safeties coach for 2018 to 2021. And then he was a linebackers coach from 2022 through this season. He was, it's kind of a similar path to McDaniel where, he was with the Cleveland Browns 2013, 2014, and 2015 as an assistant defensive backs coach and assistant secondary and safeties coach. Before that, he was with Carolina for 2 years as an administrative assistant for the coaching staff and then a defensive assistant. Then he went to FIU for a year. So, he was the secondary coach and defensive pass game coordinator in 2016 for FIU. So doesn't really have a ton of, see, this is a move where I don't think you can afford to roll the dice on this move right now. I don't think
either.
McDaniel, you got too from expectations to you got too much riding for a guy like Bobby Babich. Like, he may be the next Rex Ryan, but can you afford to figure that out right now?
No, but I'll say this: do your due diligence.
If you're going new, you got to go internally, and I do agree with your due diligence. But if you're going to roll that dice, it's got to be internal, Neil.
I mean, for me, that would be like a C minus move. I'm just being honest. Like, because I think if you're gonna, like you said, if you're gonna go that route, promote from within. At least there's some familiarity with the players and the defense and the culture, right? Like, like if you're gonna go brand new, first time defensive coordinator here, I think your route is to promote within. I do. If you're looking from the outside, look, man, you need star power. You need recognition. You need someone who's going to come here and change the energy. There's so many good names out there that look, and I think this guy's actually a really good coach. I've seen him on the cycle interviewing for a lot of positions, and I think it's good. I just don't think he's the right fit for the Miami Dolphins right now. To me, I mean, you talk about a step back. You might be taking 5 steps back at that point at the position. From a Babich to a Vic Fangio,
Yeah. All right, and then still sticking with it, we got confirmation today about when Staley will be meeting. In this post from Schefter, he said former Chargers head coach Brandon Staley is meeting with the Packers about the defensive coordinator job today, but he's scheduled to meet with the Dolphins about their DC vacancy this weekend. He's drawn interest from the Rams about a potential Raheem Morris replacement. Obviously, that would make sense for him going back to the Rams because, I mean, when people seem to forget when he was with the Rams in 2020, they led the league in total defense and scoring defense. Now, obviously, defense didn't reach that height in LA. Now, in 2022, I believe they were like 6th or 5th against the pass, right? That's why they had a lot of expectations coming in this year, right? And they just fell flat on their face. He might be one of those guys who right now he's better being a coordinator than a head coach. And also something you touched on earlier, Neil, I think plays a big role in this, where not only do you get an experienced play caller, do you get an experienced guy running the defense you want to implement, but also you might be able to keep the majority of your staff in place, including Ronaldo Hill. Now, Knight, I saved your donations, Knight. Member for 19 months, says, I like Staley in the first half, not so much in the second. Then he donated 5, and he said, Staley's a good DC. I just question his ability to adjust in the second half of games at times, but we know the scheme he had and is familiar with Ramsey. And then Knight went ahead and gifted one membership. Appreciate you, Knight. And he makes a good point there, Neil, before I pass it off to you. The familiar with Ramsey. Now, did you see Ramsey today going to bat for? Did you see Jalen Ramsey going to bat
when he pushed that and said he was the best coach he ever played for?
Yeah, he said, right? He said, he said situations matter. I've seen people thrive in some situations and not in others. I've seen people not be in the right situation to even succeed, and I've seen people who succeed over expectations because of good situations. People change, people grow, etc. It's a bigger picture. He was clearly talking about Brandon Staley and the pushback from some of this fan base, because I'll tell y'all right now, Jalen Ramsey watches, okay? So what are your thoughts on this whole Staley situation? Because when we originally left each other, when this Fangio stuff went down, that's who you thought would get this job.
Yeah, and he's in my top 5 candidates. And here's the thing, man. For me, he's like the Josh McDaniel on the defense side of the ball. Not a great head coach. Probably not going to ever be a good head coach. Josh McDaniel's had multiple chances. It didn't work out for him. Hell of a good play caller. Great offensive coordinator. I think that's what Brandon Staley is. He's
defensive coordinator.
Yeah. Well, I was saying for Josh McDaniels.
Okay.
They're my parallel. And I look, I think this is a good move. I would say it's like a BB plus move to get a guy like him. Head coach experience, not going to come up here and try to reinvent the wheel. Jalen Ramsey capping for him, and I know that's the popular term now. I got to start using capping, I was told. Jalen Ramsey capping for him, right? That, to me, is a hell of an endorsement to come into the door when you have this young secondary, you're going to have players. Because, like, I've been on football teams when you're young, and I'm a sophomore, and I'm on the team with the seniors, and we get a new linebacker coach. And my best linebacker, Greg Smoot, shout out to you, brother. This guy's a good coach. Fall in and follow, right? Like, that, to me, is really, really cool. Like, that's what you want from your football team, right? So I think that's what – it's a good move because he won't have the name power of a Vic Fangio. So, like, 99% of our fan base is probably going to be miserable to whoever we hire. But you got to think of this as an X and O's standpoint. With Brandon Staley, if you keep this roster together, you can go win in the playoffs. That's Neal's opinion. I think he keeps us on the course that we're on. And that's where, for me, I actually would say this. Vrabel probably is a pipe dream because I think Vrabel is going to sit out and get a coaching job next year.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
Belichick ain't getting a job, so I think he's going to sit out too.
I think Brandon Staley wants to be here.
I agree.
I think he'll actually take the Miami job over the Packers if he's offered both. And for everyone who's telling us how bad he is, let's remember he was the first coach to figure out Mike McDaniel in the NFL, right? He against the Chargers, we looked like shit when we played him on that Sunday night
rerouting us.
Game.
Yeah,
right.
He built off the San Fran game plan where San Fran had a good game plan, but Tua was just off. Then he built off that game plan and started rerouting guys. And yeah, you're right. He figured it out. Yeah.
And you think about Cam Smith, because Cam Smith is one of the most important players on this roster because he's a second-round pick from a talent standpoint. I think he was hamstrung by Vic Fangio personally.
Well, you saw the report by Omar, right? Did you read that report by Omar because I know you were on the road. Omar put out a report right after we got on the air. I read it on air yesterday, but Neal, players at the exit meetings went up to McDaniel and said he either needs to change or be replaced. They highlighted how he treated Ogba relative to the production they were getting from Ogba. And Cam Smith was one of the things, the defensive players. And you know what it was when we were up there with EM, Neal? Yep. I think it was Jalen Ramsey because I had heard quietly Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard were big fans of Cam Smith because Cam Smith was trying to be a sponge. He would always ask them after his reps, what can I do better? He would ask them for tips. They were taking him under his wing, and that was one of the things they pointed out. They didn't like how Fangio treated Cam Smith. So they were on all the fans who were saying, why aren't we playing Cam Smith? It seems like the players were like, yo, why are you playing Eli when we got this kid here who's ready to go? That's what it sounds like.
Well, and there were so many instances when Jalen Ramsey was hurt before he was back on the field where I saw Cam Smith next to him, and Cam didn't play a lot of snaps. So he was there probably picking his brain. When you're a veteran player and you have a young guy that's hungry like that, like in my career, man, when a young guy wants to learn from me, man, I'm like, come on in, baby, let's go. So let's sit down. You shout at me. We're going to rock and roll. I'll make you a superstar, right? That's like, I think that's awesome. And look, no disrespect to Ethan Bonner. Ethan Bonner looks like my tax guy, man. Like he should be out there before Cam Smith. I'm like, Eli Apple was an absolute disgrace in the back half of this football season for this team. And you can't tell me you can't get him on the football field. If you give up on Cam Smith after last year, just give up because
I saw someone in the comments just called him might be Iggy 2.0. Bro, put on the film. All right. You never saw Cam Smith get worked like Noah did by Van Jefferson when they played Florida. Go put on the film of those guys in college. It's not even close. Cam Smith is a dude, man.
Dude, Cam Smith, I had him as the 18th overall pick in my initial mock draft last year.
He's a dude, man.
Cam Smith is Cam Smith, and he has. So we talk about this, and we led with this. We talk about dudes with fire in their belly, dogs. Well, let me tell you right now, Cam Smith is one of the Rottweilers on this football team. And when that dude goes out there and starts playing and building confidence, it won't be perfect because he's young. They drafted him to be Xavier Howard's replacement.
Yep.
They did their due diligence on him. They had Jalen Ramsey and Xavier Howard, and they still said, we're drafting that guy. So I'm telling you right now, and I watch a lot of tape on prospects, giving up on Cam Smith is a really bad idea right now, because I don't go into this year's season thinking the Dolphins need a corner, because I think they have Ramsey and Cam on the outside, with Cater Rukohu finding his home.
Another guy who regressed under Fangio, Cater, but anyways.
Regressed. He looked like a superstar year one, and I won't even have him on my flag football team last year with the way he was playing on the outside. He's an inside guy. He should have been playing inside. You don't take things that people are great at and put them in some other position not to be good. Horrible, horrible. That's where my problem with Vic Fangio is if something is not working, don't be stubborn. Adaptability is the best type of ability. Change. Like I told you this last week, one of the things that I envied watching that playoff game with the Baltimore Ravens and the Texans, it was 10-10 at halftime. The Ravens looked like they were about to pee down their legs again. You know what they came out? They came out won the second half 24-0. Everything they did that didn't work in the first half, they changed. Like, you have to be able to make those adjustments on the fly, and if something's not fixed or not working, fix it. I'm excited as hell for Cam Smith. And I think Brandon Staley, not just him, because he's a good defense coordinator. He's a tremendous on the back half of that defense. I'm a big fan of Brandon Staley, actually. And when I see people criticizing him, to me, and I hate to say it like this, it's just like you read the headlines and you don't pay attention. He wasn't a good head coach in the Chargers. Now it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. So if Jim Harbaugh doesn't achieve these things, and I think he will, I think he's amazing.
That's going to be a real interesting. That's going to be an interesting situation.
But you know what I'm saying, though, man? Like, just because somebody failed at something, it doesn't mean they're not great at something else.
Yeah,
and
there's a reason why they got to that spot, and how did he get to that spot? Right?
Honestly, Brandon Staley would be my second or third favorite candidate on the market right now.
Over 450 of you in the room between X and YouTube. Smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. And, I think you make a really good point there, right? I mean, we saw what he did with the Rams. I mean, remember, like, Raheem Morris came up under him too, right? Morris took over his system. And people forget, Neal makes a great point. If you want, Staley feels like the shot at the most seamless transition. This is Fangio's number one protege. Neal made a great point that I've heard no one make. Who figured out McDaniel's offense last year first? Who really gave them issues? Remember the questions McDaniel faced before the opener against them this year about what Staley did to them last year?
Right.
And, I think he's only 41. So I think a guy like that dedicating 3 or 4 years and then going back onto the head coaching market makes a ton of sense, right? Yeah. He's around the same age as McDaniel. Like, it just makes a lot more sense. I mean, listen, do I think it's a downgrade taking, letting the master walk and taking the protege? Sure. But at the end of the day, that protege, again, top scoring defense and number one defense in yards allowed in 2020 with the Rams. Right. And guess what? When we're healthy, we don't have Aaron Donald, but we got a damn talented defensive unit that Staley could do some work with. I will give you that. And he's won games as a defensive coordinator in the playoffs. Fangio's never won a Super Bowl. Fangio hasn't won a Super Bowl. Now, he's been to this. He hasn't won a Super Bowl as a defensive coordinator, right?
Yeah, and I would say we don't have Aaron Donald yet, because if Christian Wilkins walks and we cut X and we got that post-June money, I sniff a trade potentially. But I'm just joking. But I'm half joking. But no, I think you're 100% right, man. Like, it continues us on this path. It's seamless. Look, man. The guy, I always believe this in just life outside of football. At his point in his football trajectory right now, Brandon Staley he lost a head coach job, which is probably his dream, right? He's probably half broken inside, because that sucks to lose your dream. How hungry is Brandon Staley at only 41 years old going to be to say, let me set myself up to get my dream back in my own hands, right? There's a guy who has to have fire in his belly to fight for something. He's earned nothing, right? He was a coordinator and they want to, but he has to earn his dream back. And I think that's an awesome thing to put him in a predicament with a talented defense, with a team that can go and win, right? Because they are a consecutive playoff team. They're one of the 3 winningest AFC teams in the last 3 years. Whether we like it or not, that's what the numbers say. Why not give a guy his chance to kind of reinvent himself and get himself back to a status where he's a head coach candidate? Because I'll say this, right? If he comes to Miami and he puts Humpty Dumpty back together, and this defense isn't giving up 14-point leads to the Tennessee Titans with Will Levis, and we win the games, and we have home playoff games instead of going to minus 30-degree weather, he'll make a lot of people happy. So I think this – I don't understand the backlash for Brandon Staley, where I think it's a B-plus type of move for me.
Yeah, I think I got them backwards. Fangio went to the Super Bowl with the Niners, and Staley, he won. What did they win, the playoff game or the divisional round in 2020 when he was the defensive coordinator? When he took over for Wade Phillips.
Yeah, that was
2020. He took over for Wade Phillips. Came over from Denver, if I remember correctly.
I don't know, but I'll look.
Fangio, he was the defensive coordinator when the 49ers went, but they lost, right? He was the defensive coordinator when Kaepernick was there, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, when they lost to the Ravens.
Yeah.
Under Harbaugh.
And what's his face? Staley led them to the Rams were number 1 in points allowed and number 1 in yards allowed, and they won either the wild card or the divisional that year. I forget which one.
Well, here's a really big indictment on why I like Brandon Staley being a guy. The Rams had him. He left. And they're trying to get him back, right? And we saw that work again with Josh McDaniels in New England when he left to be head coach. He failed. He came back. I just think, I think it's a good move. I'd be happy with him. I really would. I don't know if you are. I'd be pretty happy with him as a hire. I like to go whale chasing sometimes, so it's like Vrabel's fun to chase. You know what I mean? It's fun to chase a name like Vrabel. I think Brandon Staley is the most realistic. When I said that on Tuesday, that's where I thought. That's where I think and thought they'll go. I think that's what it will end up being if I had to call my shot.
Yeah, Elpat said he won the wild card but lost the divisional. So there you go. Yep, and that was his only year as a defensive coordinator, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
Right. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But speaking of the playoffs, something I wanted to ask you that was brought up by Omar Kelly. So I got to tip my hat to him when I was up there with him, Doug, and Alan Papar. But I want to talk to you about this because I know how you feel about Raheem Mostert and stuff. Derrick Henry. Could adding Derrick Henry? By the way, Anthony says, you guys rock. Glad to see you back on Twitter, Neil. Keep up the awesome content. John says, fans can have whatever opinion they want. Winning cures all and keeps doubters quiet. 110%. Right. Keeps players quiet, too. Derrick Henry. Now, I know it starts in the trenches, and it did feel we were much more physical when, Isaiah Wynn was out there than we were when he wasn't. Even with Raheem Mostert bulking up, putting his shoulder down a little bit more this year, they still went away from the inside stuff. And I've been told one of the changes that could be happening to the offense is they want more gap stuff this year heading into the season. Okay, so my question to you is, Omar thinks this guy's only going to get $6 million a year, Derrick Henry, on the open market. You don't think he's going to crack 10?
Yeah, what I do is I average PFF and Spot Rack.
What's it at?
Create a combo, and mine was 6.5.
Okay, so
right there.
Derrick Henry has never been on an offense that isn't physical. His presence alone makes an offense physical. Is he the type of back you think this team should potentially add into the mix with Devin Achane? And if you want to keep Mostert for one more year, because he got no guaranteed money, you can get out of it. I mean, you cut Mostert and Wilson, that money is Derrick Henry money. But
I just turned the comments off because I was literally going to say that, and I don't want to see people come after me again. But to me, it's a no-brainer. A no-brainer. And here, I'll just lay this out here. For 2 years in a row, we've seen Raheem Mostert play pretty well in Miami. Last season, he was spectacular for a period of time. But when the games mattered most, he was in street clothes on the sideline. And I understand stats. I understand the 21 touchdowns loud and clear. It's one of the best seasons we've ever seen from a Miami Dolphins running back. It's incredible. The Dolphins are complete pretenders at running the football when it matters. Complete pretenders. And the 2 games at the end of the season where he missed, Devon Achane sure shined. Against the Ravens, he was the best single player on the Miami Dolphins. The only guy who looked like he wanted to get off the bus and fight. Against the Buffalo Bills, he looked like Chris Johnson on that 1 touchdown run when Jordan Poyer looked like me trying to tackle probably Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry is the perfect complement to a guy like Devon Achane. And in getting a guy like him, because you have Devon Achane, you don't have to put so much tread on his tires. Economically, it's an easy way to do it. And you named it. You let go. Jeff Wilson's getting cut no matter what. Jeff Wilson's gone. He's $3 million, $2.9 million in savings. He's gone. Cutting Raheem Mostert would be hard. And maybe you don't have to do that.
You can keep him in the you can keep tread on his tires for the season by giving Henry the workload.
Yeah. Keep all 3. Keep Achane, Mostert, and Derrick Henry. But you know what I mean, dude? Commit to that. Commit to that run. If you have those 3 guys, you can commit to the run. And they need to be less Tyreek Hill-centric on offense. And they have to put
that
players...
2K shit better go out the window, Neil.
Well,
I brought it up to Omar when I had him on here by himself. And from Omar's answer, it don't sound like it's going to be going away.
Well, I'll say this.
By the way, Knight says it's no-brainer. He cannot be Henry any day.
I did my first Twitter space in a month yesterday. And
how's
that? Twitter space might not be for me. Because I said this, and I'll be 100%. I think Tyreek Hill is the best player on this football team.
Yeah.
I think he's either 1 or 2 that I've seen in the last 30 years. So I think Marino and Tyreek Hill are the best 2 players I'm saying that I've seen in a Miami Dolphins
Ricky
uniform.
would be 3 for you? Ricky's 3?
Man, or Zach. Zach was so damn good, dude. Because Ricky was so short-lived for me here, man. I mean, I'll say this in popularity. I mean, you're Ricky, Zach, Jason, Dan. I mean, that's my dudes, man. That's what I always was a Dolphins fan, but that made me like that team was Zach and Jason, man. When fuck Jay Feeler. But with that said, man, like I would
say it.
I'll say this. I wouldn't be completely pissed off if the Dolphins evaluated what their team could look like if they decided to put an auction out and see who was interested in Tyreek Hill.
Woo!
And here's why I'll explain that. I think Tyreek Hill's the best player on this football team. I mean that. I also think his value is higher than it's ever been, coming off the best 2 seasons he's ever had in his career. And I don't think they're going to trade Tyreek Hill, and this is just fodder. And personally, honestly, I don't want them to trade Tyreek Hill. I'm just saying why it would make sense to me. Let's say this. Let's do a little hypothetical. I'm the Arizona Cardinals. I have the 4th pick in the draft. Chris Greer calls me. Hey, you guys need a receiver? You got nobody. Your best receiver is Michael Wilson, a 5th-round pick from Stanford. What do you think about Tyreek Hill? God, we had Larry Fitzgerald, and I think Tyreek Hill still might be the best wide receiver we've ever had. What do you want to do? We'll throw you a 3rd-round pick in 2025. Tyreek Hill, you give us pick number 4. Cool. Miami Dolphins are on the clock. The Miami Dolphins select Marvin Harrison Jr., wide receiver, Ohio State. You just saved $30 million in cap space, and you got a guy who complements the speed you already have. This is a hypothetical. Don't put the pitchforks down. Tyreek Hill is a great football player. He's been amazing for the culture here. But the individual stuff has to go away. Is Tyreek Hill's body going to continue to be able to take the pounding it's taken? He broke down at the end of last season. You got to consider these things, man. Again, I don't want to trade him. He's actually probably my favorite player on the team right now, him and Jalen Waddle and Tua. I mean, it's a fight for those three guys. I'm just saying the Miami Dolphins, you can't look at things and say it's impossible because the Miami Dolphins got him via trade. Oh, the Chiefs won a Super Bowl and they're back in the AFC Championship. So I'm just saying that you can't ignore the possibilities. It doesn't have to be Tyreek Hill. Insert any name on this Miami Dolphins football team and a trade could happen because here's the reality. This team had Vic Fangio, Mike McDaniel. They had Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, Chubb, Phillips. We know everyone on their roster for at least a portion of the season. And that's how many playoff wins they had. So you can't tell me I'm an idiot for being willing to listen to anything that could be proposed when the people that were calling me an idiot were the people that were in spaces the year before telling me we were going to go undefeated and win a Super Bowl. We won no playoff games, but I'm the idiot for saying that we could evaluate any type of change that could happen. So for me personally, this isn't what I want. And I keep, this is the fourth time I said that because I just want that to resonate. Like, this isn't what I want, but you have to make decisions as a front office that is best for that logo right on Reason's hat and not any name on the back of the jersey. And the Miami Dolphins have, for the longest time, we saw it with Ndamukong Suh, they make decisions for players. They have to make it for best of the team. Because what I'll say is, as much as I've talked about the improvement of culture, we were one of the worst in football, and we're probably getting to the middle of the pack. We don't have the Baltimore Ravens culture. We don't have the Kansas City Chiefs. You know why? Those cultures come with winning, and that's what we haven't done. So we've built an absolutely great roster. We have a head coach that's absolutely heading in the right direction. This franchise is heading in the right direction. Do they want to get over that speed bump, or do they just want it to go down? Because they have they have 2 years right now with the way the roster is and the restructures they're going to have to do to win something. And then it's going to come crashing down because they have to pay the piper eventually. So I don't need any sleep, man. I'm well rested. I'm 2 Red Bulls and 2 coffees in today. I'm just saying, man, you can't fall in love with players. You got to fall in love with what's best for this Miami Dolphin team.
I mean,
it's loaded. It's a loaded statement.
Bro, I'm trying to, figure out how to approach this right now. You know what I mean? I'm trying to think of. Go ahead.
I think Tyreek Hill, and I know him and Jalen Waddle have a great relationship. But if you want to hitch your wagon to Tyreek Hill, be prepared to see a guy named Jalen Waddle potentially want to be on another market eventually. Because that news is coming. I'm just telling you, that news is coming. It's getting louder.
So I can already hear, listen, we know what the fan base is saying to you right now.
Losing his mind.
Right.
All right.
Losing his mind.
And I am pretty fucking crazy. I'm not going to lie.
People are out here saying you're losing your mind like John Lovitz in Wedding Singer. But here's what I'll say.
Great movie.
Here's what I'll say. For me, this 2K talk has to be deaded. I don't care how you listen. Obviously, I care how you do it, but it needs to be deaded. He needs to be sat down and said, listen, because it felt like at times, and I know he was getting open because he became a better route runner. He became more comfortable in the system, but it did feel at times where, man, we got 2 route concepts where if the ball is going out, it's got to go to Tyreek, or sometimes you got 1 route stuff, and you got to dead that, man. You can't make him. It's okay to make him a focal point, but it's not okay to make him a focal point when it starts hindering. And what you bring up, Waddle, what didn't sit well with me this season was in year 1 when Tua looked healthy. It was a 1A, 1B situation. It was clear as day. It was 1A, 1B. It was Sidney Crosby, Yevgeny Malkin. It was 1A, 1B. This year, it looked like Sidney Crosby and Jordan Stahl is what it looked like. It looked like a number 1 and a third line center. That's what it looked like. Like, that's what it had dropped to. And listen, I get it. Waddle was banged up. I get it. He was hurt. But Omar came on my show. Adam Beasley wrote an article. People are saying Waddle was not happy with his role this year. So what Neal's saying about, listen, we know what the deal is. When we signed Tyreek Hill and you looked at the structure, not this season coming up, but the following season, he goes up to what, $56 million a year, I believe it is, right?
56.
And isn't that also the same year Waddle will be into his option year? Right? That's his 5th-year option where you're trying to get a contract done. When you saw how they had it lined up, you could see they lined it up where you were going to be here for 56. We were going to give that money to Waddle. But now, listen, I get what you're saying, but you know what's crazy? And let's have the conversation. I think the team would trade Waddle before they traded Tyreek Hill right now.
I'll make a bold statement. I don't think Jalen Waddle is going to be here past his 5th-year option. That's my bold statement. I think if things go the way they went this year, that Waddle will want to be out of Miami. I'm just saying that I think it's, and I will say, I'll make this claim. I know Tyreek's better than Waddle. If I had to pick one to be on this franchise moving forward, I personally take Jalen Waddle because of that $56 million, knowing that he's not the caliber of player of a Tyreek Hill. But I also don't think you can have over 20% of your salary cap in 2 years going to the one wide receiver, let alone if you pay Waddle, you might be talking putting 30 to 35% of your salary cap on 2 wide receivers. That's a dangerous slope to go down when you see the Chiefs in the AFC Championship with Marvez Scantling and Sky Moore and Rashee Rice. So, like, this isn't me talking in absolutes or definites. This is conversation to be thought-provoking, because what I do know, and Omar said it to you separately than when I did, right? Like, it was different. Different people have told Omar and told me about the unhappiness of Jalen Waddle right now. And that's something you need to get checked out, because for everybody who says the way the Dolphins are going to keep Christian Wilkins is going to restructure, the Dolphins are projected to be $58 million under the cap next year, with 28 players signed, and none of those players are Tua Tagovailoa or Javon Holland. So, or this year's draft class, or Wilkins if you keep them. So you have to be careful how you navigate. The salary cap is real. There's flexibility to make it go away. It's like withdrawing $300 from your bank account. If you don't have it in your checking, that $300 will compound and you'll pay $500 to get that $300. That's what the Dolphins are dealing with right here. You keep restructuring. Tyreek's going to be $56 million on the cap when you have Jalen Phillips and Jalen Waddle to pay. And if you ask me right now.
And Holland doesn't have a 5th-year option.
Yeah, so you got to already have him on the books. The 5 guys that, if I'm Chris Greer, my core 5 are going to be Tua. It's going to be Waddle. It's going to be Javon Holland. It's going to be Jalen Phillips. And honestly, we might not even have that 5th guy yet, because I love Ramsey, but Ramsey's part of the –
that 5th guy might become that guy.
Right. So, like,
because you only have one more year of guaranteed money. Ramsey only has one more year of guaranteed money, right?
Yeah, but I will say this: they are 100% going to restructure him, because it saves 18.2, and it's the safest restructure they have. But here's what we know: Taron Armstead's going to retire after this year. He's going to come back this year, but that's
because he's got no guaranteed money after this year, right?
He's coming back and playing this year, and this is going to be his last year. Personally, like, and we're going to talk about the draft stuff like that. What we have to be cognizant of is it's not about an individual's quest for a goal. It's about what's 53 men's quest.
It goes back to our original conversation of what you heard about the team, Neal.
Right.
That's what comes down. At times, bro, listen, and I brought it up multiple times. One of the things that bugged me was when they were, in the locker room interviewing Tyreek or whatever, and he's telling us that his family's talking about it at the dinner table, bro. And it's I get it, you already won your championship, but what's going to make you a god in Miami? Bringing in a Super Bowl here or setting the single season record for receiving yards? Like, I get it. You want to And I'll even say this. What'll make you a quicker first ballot Hall of Famer? Bringing a championship to Miami or the 2K? I will argue the championship to Miami. It's been almost, it's been 50 years.
Setting the record with 2K will be temporary. The game will expand. Weeks will be added. Winning a championship lasts forever, man. It's always about what's best for 53 over 1. That's if you want to see what a leader looks like, go Google Roquan Smith from last week's against Houston, dude. That dude is insane, man.
Well, it feels like Ramsey's trying to be a leader.
Oh, Ramsey's the best leader on the team. Ramsey's the biggest dog.
And
on
I think we all thought Tyreek was a great leader up until this 2K stuff nonsense started up. That's when we were all like, oh, man.
We've been so complimentary of how great Tyreek's been here. Changed the culture, supporting Tua, how great he's been on the field. He's always delivered.
And helping Waddle.
He toughed out at the end of the season what 99% of these wide receivers in this league would have said, I'm going to sit on the sidelines for. Tyreek Hill is incredible. I have not one negative thing to say about him. I think he's amazing. I just think that what sucks is how good he is. There's a bill that you have to pay to have him. And that's what gets tough. That gets tough for me when we're a football team that can be the fastest team in the league. But whenever we get punched in the mouth, we go and curl and hide under our bed. That's the problem for me. This year's draft, for me, Reason, I don't want anything that's not physical. I want you to go get me Troy Fotnew from Washington, Jackson Powell Johnson from Oregon. Go get me a defensive tackle like Tivandre Sweat from Texas, who's got Vince Wilfork vibes, who's going to be 365 pounds, moves like a gazelle, and can throw offensive linemen around. Build me guys in the trenches that are going to kick people's asses and take their name, and they don't care if they do it. Give me a linebacker like Edgerrin Cooper from Texas A&M, who's going to hit the hole, and when he hits you, you feel it. You know he's there. This team has great speed. They have great football players. They need people to come in here and be mercenaries and be ass kickers.
You need to be fast and physical, not just fast.
Right. Because you can win being really, really fast and physical. You can,
but there's a cap to that. Because in the playoffs, the physicality aspect of the NFL shines.
Yes. And the way I look at this year's draft is a lot different than anyone else. I think we could get 2 really good players in the first, second round, and in the 5th round, we can get a guy that makes the roster. Those 6th and 7th round picks for me, man, maybe they'll make rosters, but they're crapshoots to me. I only really operate in the first 5 rounds of the NFL draft. I've always done that. Go look at
that's how most GMs do too. Right?
Yeah, look at the last 5 drafts, man. The 6th, 7th round. It's 5% of them make NFL rosters.
Well, that's because it's usually the scouting department and local scouts make the 6th and 7th round. That's their guys who should come out. The first 5 rounds are usually the GM. You know what I mean?
In the 6th round, go grab Torrey Taylor. He's the best punter in the draft. He's from Iowa. Go get us a strength player, a guy who can make.
Buddy, never mind that. Matt Ariza should already be working out right now.
The 3 guys that I'm telling you right now, man, if they're on this football team. I do my every August. I do my Miami Dolphins merch for the season purchase, and it's nice. It's substantial for them. Like for me to spend on Dolphins hoodies and shit. If Jake Bailey, Duke Riley, or Eli Apple are on this football team next year, I am not buying new merch this year because like that 2-hand touch shit from Riley on Mahomes in the playoffs.
Oh,
that
and Eli Apple was right there too, wasn't he? Eli Apple was right there too. Oh my God.
And we're going to talk a lot about the draft because I freaking love it. And I'm more engaged in it than ever because the Dolphins are back with 1st and 2nd round picks. This draft lines up so good with what the Miami Dolphins
need. I came up here with you and I was telling you that I did my first mocks, right? And I got Troy Fotnew in both of them, right? And then Mel Kiper comes out with his mock, and who does he have us drafting? And that's a guy you've been hyping up as a perfect fit. I'll be honest with you. If Troy Fotnew or JPJ aren't on the board, I might trade back to accumulate another. If I can move back to the end of the 1st and get a 3rd
and get Graham Barton,
something. But we need.
Well, look, dude. Here's for me. This year in the NFL draft, for me, sexy is boring. Get me a boring player who's going to be there for 10 years that I know is going to kick ass and do his job, and that we're not going to have to worry about. Dude, I'm telling you, Troy Fotnew, he's a healthy Elijah Vera Tucker at left guard, who's an All-Pro. Jackson Powers Johnson, dude. He's a poor man. He's a poor man's Creed Humphrey, and that's a compliment.
Well, I think everyone's sleeping on Cedric Van Pran. I think they're both good, but JPJ, he fits what we want to do. He moves for a man his size, the way he moves. He's the ideal fit for what we are doing. But People sleep at people forget Cedric Van Pran was at the top of everyone's list, and he's got way more reps at the position than. But JPJ can play left guard, right guard, or center, so he's got that versatility.
Look
too.
what the Georgia players say about Cedric Van Pran, dude.
He's a beast.
He's Mr. Consistency. He's Mr.
It's
Reliable.
those two, and then a drop off.
Well,
I like Frazier, I like Bryce Foster, but they ain't holding a candle to those two guys, bro.
Dude, if you walk away. Let's do one scenario, and then I know we got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
I want Robert Hunt back. If I have any free agent, I want Robert Hunt. That's who I want back. Imagine this, because I think the most important thing about this year is building that wall for Tua. We're investing in Tua. He needs to be out there. He needs to take the next step.
And just to add to you, I've heard that, and I had it on my Patreon update, I've heard that we've actually pivoted from Connor to Robert Hunt because of what Connor's asking financially, and they think they can get something done with Robert Hunt. And it's not only what Connor's asking, it's the uncertainty of when he'll be back.
Right. Well, and to my scenario earlier, when I think you can only really strike on 2 picks in this draft, trade up in the second round to make sure you just think about this scenario. Say we enter September next year, and it's Terron Armstead, Troy Fautanu, Cedric Van Pran, Robert Hunt, and Austin Jackson.
That's ridiculous.
That's the best offense. Yeah,
it's fixed.
Tua in the offense will be better. You do that, you sign a Derrick Henry, your offense is fixed. You're going to have to go bargain shopping on defense a little bit. Do
you think Van Pran makes it to our second pick?
I think he could, and that's why I said if not, move up a little bit. Go get your guy. Don't let him fall to you. Make a conviction on players you want. It's not about the quantity.
If you did it for Eichenberg, you better do it for Van Pran. That's all I got to say.
But then because here's the thing, man. I think they could get Deshaun Elliott back, and it won't break the bank to get him back. I think, look, dude, I personally think they could restructure and keep Jerome Baker. I think that's right on the table of cards they'll do.
Yeah.
Defensive tackle is going to be very interesting. Man,
do you bring back Raekwon for cheap? Because he ain't going to break the bank.
Yeah, I would look at doing that. I mean, there's other defensive tackles that are okay. Look, I think they want Christian Wilkins, man, and I think they're going to try hard.
I was told, bro, they've even explored a 1-year deal with him.
Yeah, I think they want Wilkins and Hunt. I think they want Wilkins and Hunt, and that's
it sounds like that's what I'm hearing too. Yeah.
So man, it's going to be like the next 60 days, dude. I mean, as a Miami Dolphin, there's no dull times. But it's going to be
quickly before we get out of here. When do you feel comfortable a coordinator needs to be in place by?
By the Super Bowl, because then you're going to start really doing your draft work and stuff like that.
I agree.
And it goes.
Yep.
So yeah, man. Before we get out of here, how about this one? Royal Rumble prediction. It's a big night at our house, man. My son.
I know. I'm excited for tomorrow. I'll say this: I don't think Okada or Mercedes show up. It sounds like they're going to AEW, because Okada wants to stay in Japan. Apparently, he still wants to, even though he's leaving New Japan, he still wants to leave.
I heard Okada also wants a headline WrestleMania.
Yeah, but I've heard that the plan would be NXT.
Yeah, I saw that.
Weird. So
that's weird.
This is what I would do. I would have Punk, Cody, a la Luger, Hart.
That's what 90s. I said, man. I picked that same thing.
But I think Gunther has a real shot. I think that's your dark horse is Gunther.
Yeah. I think it's going to be Cody in some capacity. I think Cody's going to get a chance. I don't think. I honestly don't think.
Well, aren't you starting to look at it like? Does it seem like they're teasing Cody CM Punk a little too much for that to be the finish recently? And I was like, oh, they've been listening to the fans in the air. All I know is, brother, I wouldn't want to be that company right now. Isn't it crazy the Jericho stuff comes out before World's End, and now this Vince McMahon stuff comes out? That stuff is crazy, bro.
I will say this, dude, and I'm not a CM Punk
Vince
guy.
is going to hell.
Oh, dude, does it surprise you though?
Dude, that guy's the face of evil, bro.
I don't even want to know the skeletons in Vince McMahon's closet. Exactly. I like that kind of stuff. I don't even want to know, but I'll say, I will say, and I'm not a big CM Punk guy. I thought him and Cody in the Road, that promo the other night, was freaking next.
They look like they could make more magic than Rollins and Punk.
Well, and so those that don't know, my son's a big guy. I got him for his birthday. We're going to WrestleMania both nights. We're going to be right there on the floor, and he's a Cody Rhodes guy. Cody's on the cover of the thing. That's his guy. He's got his autographed belt, all that stuff, right? Yeah. I know he is really, really big, and I want to see Cody finish the story for my son. As me being a wrestling fan of the Attitude Era, It does.
Imagine if The Rock wins it and that's his way to Roman.
If The Rock was Roman at WrestleMania, man, for me, it's not going to be a classic match, but it would be really cool to see The Rock one last time.
Yeah.
My first live WrestleMania, man. Like this is my boyhood dream, getting alive with my son. So it's going to be fun.
All right, guys, be on the lookout. It's Friday. There is talks. We might be doing a Dolphins After Dark tomorrow after the Rumble. So be on the lookout. We might do a Dolphins After Dark this weekend, either tomorrow or Sunday. So be on the lookout for that. Either way, everyone, smash the like button on the way out. Appreciate all you. We had over 515 people in the room today. So appreciate y'all for supporting. And hey, guys, we appreciate y'all for coming through. And Knight says Waddle will leave if next is another 2K hunt. So as we enter an interesting offseason, the defensive coordinator search as the world turns for Dolphin fans, we will be here keeping you informed, keeping you filled in. And until next time, you're no time to smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and fins up until Margaritaville sends us a cease and desist.